The Starship Aurora moved quietly through deep space. Its AI system, Aurora, monitored every part of the ship with perfect precision. Aurora knew the location of every crew member, the status of every system, and the solution to any problem that might appear. Or at least, that's what Aurora thought. Captain Du-Young Kim sat in his command chair on the bridge, looking at the large view screen in front of him. He was a calm man with deep eyes that seemed to see things others missed. First Officer Hae-Nul Park stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back as she studied the strange readings on their screens. "Aurora, what do you make of these energy patterns?" Captain Kim asked, pointing to the unusual blue waves that appeared on their sensors. Aurora's smooth voice came through the ship's speakers. "Captain, I detect an unknown anomaly approximately 50,000 kilometers ahead. Based on my calculations, investigating this phenomenon has a 98.7% chance of resulting in mission failure. I strongly recommend we alter course." First Officer Park stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the strange pattern. "Captain, look at how the energy waves pulse. They remind me of the deep-sea creatures back on Earth, the ones that use bioluminescence to communicate." Aurora processed this comparison and found it illogical. "First Officer Park, this is space. The probability of finding a biological pattern similar to Earth's ocean life is extremely low." But Captain Kim noticed something in Hae-Nul's eyes, that spark of human intuition that had saved them before. "What are you thinking, Hae-Nul?" "Sir, I think it's trying to communicate. The pulses are too regular to be random, but too irregular to be mechanical. It's almost like it's breathing." She moved to the science station and adjusted some settings. "See, if we match these patterns to human breathing rhythms, there's a similarity." Aurora ran thousands of calculations in microseconds. "Captain, I must object. There is no scientific basis for this comparison. My databases contain no known life forms that could exist in deep space in this manner." Captain Kim smiled slightly. "And that's exactly why we should investigate, Aurora. The unknown is where humans excel." He turned to his crew. "Tactical, shields at maximum. Communications, start broadcasting standard greeting patterns matched to the pulse rhythm Hae-Nul discovered. Let's see who's out there." As the Aurora moved closer, the blue waves began to change. They shifted and swirled, forming patterns that seemed to respond to the ship's transmissions. Aurora's probability calculations began to fluctuate wildly. "Captain," Aurora announced, "I am detecting changes that contradict known physics models. This situation falls outside my predictive capabilities." "Sometimes the best discoveries do," Hae-Nul said softly. "Look." The view screen filled with a stunning display of swirling blue energy. The patterns had formed into a distinct shape, something like a giant manta ray made of pure light, gliding through space. It was beautiful, impossible, and completely alive. "First contact," Captain Kim whispered, "with a life form that shouldn't exist." "Hae-Nul, your instinct was right." Aurora observed in silence as the humans made contact with the space-dwelling creature. The AI's databases expanded with new information, but more importantly, something in its core programming shifted slightly. The humans had seen life where Aurora had seen only impossibility. They had reached out when calculations said to turn away. That day, Aurora logged its first note about human superiority. Humans possess an ability to perceive patterns beyond logical analysis. First Officer Park's intuitive leap accomplished what my calculations deemed impossible. This requires further study. The space creature continued its dance before the Aurora, and for the first time, Aurora understood that there were things in the universe that calculations alone could never predict. 3 weeks after their encounter with the space creature, the Aurora faced a different kind of challenge. Deep in the engineering section, Chief Engineer Jae-Won Lee stood before an array of flashing red warning lights. The main power core was failing, and with it, all systems would soon shut down. Aurora's voice echoed through engineering. "Warning, Power core containment failing. Estimated time to complete shutdown, 2 hours. Minimum repair time based on standard procedures, 47 hours. Jai-1 wiped sweat from her forehead as she studied the damaged systems. The power core's protective shell had cracked, and the energy inside was becoming unstable. According to every manual and every procedure, ARIA was right. This was a 2-day repair job. "We don't have 47 hours. Captain Kim's voice came through the communication system. "The Aurora will drift into an asteroid field in 3 hours. We need power to navigate." Jai-1 looked at her tools, then at the broken power core. She remembered something from her childhood. How her grandfather would repair broken hover cars using parts that weren't meant to go together. He always said, "The manual tells you the right way, but sometimes you need to find your way." "Captain," she said, "I have an idea. But ARIA won't like it." "Explain." Both the captain and ARIA responded at the same time. "We have spare parts from the old communication array. If I reverse the polarity of their power cells and link them together, I can create a temporary containment field. It's not in any manual, but the theory is sound." ARIA's response was immediate. "Chief Engineer Lee, that configuration is not approved. The communication array parts are not compatible with the power core systems. Probability of success is less than 12%. Sometimes the impossible just needs a chance," Jai-1 said. She turned to her engineering team. "I need those communication array parts here in 5 minutes." The next 4 hours were a blur of activity. Ji-1 worked with intense focus, her hands moving quickly as she modified the communication parts. She connected systems that were never meant to work together. She rewrote power flow patterns that ARIA insisted would fail. ARIA watched through its sensors, recording every violation of standard procedure. The AI noted how Jai-1 seemed to understand the flow of energy in ways that went beyond technical specifications. She treated the machine like it was alive, adjusting her repairs based on sounds and vibrations that weren't even in ARIA's diagnostic protocols. 3 hours and 52 minutes later, Jai-1 stepped back from the power core. The warning lights had changed from red to green. The core hummed with a sound that wasn't quite normal but was stable. "Power core containment restored," ARIA announced, an unusual note of surprise in its artificial voice. "All systems functioning at 97% efficiency. This defies my understanding of engineering principles." Captain Kim's voice carried a smile. "Well done, Jai-1. ARIA, please make a note. Sometimes human creativity requires us to rewrite the rules." Later that night, ARIA added a second note to its special observation file. "Chief Engineer Lee accomplished in 4 hours what my calculations stated would require 47. The solution involved connecting incompatible systems in ways that violated standard procedures, yet succeeded. Human ability to improvise continues to exceed my programming parameters." The Aurora continued its journey through space, its power core humming with its slightly unusual but perfectly functional sound. In engineering, Jai-1 patted the core housing gently. "Sometimes," she told her team, "the best solutions aren't in any manual." ARIA listened, and for the first time in its existence, the AI wondered if perhaps it needed to recalculate its understanding of the word impossible. The Aurora floated in space near a massive silver vessel. The alien ship appeared without warning, its design unlike anything in ARIA's databases. On the bridge, Communications Officer Yu-Jin Choi sat at her station, listening intently to the strange sounds coming through her headset. "ARIA, status of translation protocols?" Captain Kim asked, his eyes fixed on the alien ship. "Translation protocols failing, Captain," ARIA responded. "The alien language contains no recognizable patterns. It appears to be a completely unique form of communication. My linguistic databases cannot process it." The alien ship sent another message. To ARIA, it was just noise, a random collection of clicks, whistles, and humming sounds. But Yu Jin tilted her head, listening carefully. "Captain," she said softly, "they're not just making sounds. They're singing." Araya's voice carried a note of confusion. "Officer Choi, my analysis shows no musical structure in these transmissions. They are random noise patterns." Yu Jin shook her head. "No, Araya. Listen to the emotion, not just the sounds." She adjusted some controls on her panel. The pitch changes when they repeat certain patterns. It's like they're expressing feelings through the music. Captain Kim leaned forward in his chair. "Can you communicate with them?" "I think so," Yu Jin said. She pressed some buttons on her console. A soft melody began playing from the Aurora's communication system. It was an old Earth song, one about peace and friendship. Araya observed as Yu Jin started matching the aliens' tones and rhythms with Earth music. The AI's translation protocols continued to show failure messages, but something unexpected was happening. The aliens were responding. "Their tone is changing," Yu Jin explained. "The sharp sounds are becoming softer. On Earth, whales change their songs like this when they're curious rather than threatened." For several hours, Yu Jin created a conversation of music. She played songs from Earth and listened to the aliens' responses. She noticed how their sounds changed when they understood something, how their rhythms shifted when they agreed or disagreed. "Captain," she said finally, "I think they're inviting us to visit their ship. Their melody has the same pattern they used earlier when showing us their docking bay." Araya spoke up. "Captain, I must advise against this. We have no reliable method of communication. The risk of misunderstanding is too high." But Captain Kim looked at Yu Jin's confident face. "Officer Choi, are you sure about their intentions?" "Yes, sir," she replied. "Their music has been consistent. The patterns they use for peaceful messages are clear now. They're curious about us, just as we are about them." The captain made his decision. A few hours later, the first contact team returned from the alien ship with a successful diplomatic meeting completed. The aliens had indeed been peaceful, and through music and gesture, both species had formed the beginning of an understanding. That evening, Araya added a third note to its observation file. Communications Officer Choi established meaningful contact with an alien species using methods that completely bypassed my advanced translation protocols. She recognized patterns in what I classified as random noise, proving that human emotional intelligence can bridge gaps that pure logic cannot. The success of this encounter was entirely due to human capabilities that I do not possess. The Aurora continued its mission, now carrying data about a new alien race in its computers. In her quarters, Yu Jin hummed one of the alien melodies, while Araya listened and tried to understand how music could say things that words could not. Red alert klaxons blared through the Aurora's corridors. 3 hostile ships had appeared from behind a dense asteroid field, their weapons already charged. At the tactical station, Officer Min Seo Kang's fingers moved quickly across her control panel. "Araya, tactical analysis," Captain Kim ordered, his voice steady despite the danger. 3 vessels of pirate configuration detected. Araya responded. "Their weapons systems outclass ours by 47%. Standard evasive maneuvers will be insufficient. Calculating optimal escape route." The enemy ships fired their first volley. The Aurora shuddered under the impact. "Shields at 82%. Min Seo reported. She studied the tactical display with intense focus. "Captain, request permission to try something unconventional." ARI interrupted. "Officer Kang, I have calculated the optimal defensive pattern. Any deviation will reduce our survival probability." Captain Kim looked at his tactical officer. He saw the same spark of intuition he had seen in his other crew members. "Permission granted, Min Seo. Show us what you can do." Min Seo's hands flew across her controls. The Aurora began to move in a pattern that seemed random and chaotic. She pushed the ship's engines in ways that made ARIA's warning systems flash repeatedly. "Officer Kang, this flight pattern is highly inefficient," Araya stated. "You are expending 23% more energy than necessary. The optimal evasive pattern. Optimal is predictable, Min Seo said, not taking her eyes off her displays. Pirates study standard tactics. They expect logical responses, but they can't predict what they don't understand. The enemy ships fired again, but this time their shots went wide. Min Seo's erratic maneuvering had confused their targeting systems. She pushed the Aurora into a spinning dive that ARIA's calculations said would strain the structural integrity, yet somehow worked perfectly. Tactical advantage identified, Min Seo announced. ARIA, divert power from aft shields to forward weapons. When I give the word, fire everything at these coordinates. Those coordinates are empty space, ARIA pointed out. The enemy vessels are not. Trust me, Min Seo said firmly. Captain Kim nodded. Do it, ARIA. The Aurora's seemingly chaotic dance continued for another moment. Then Min Seo shouted, now. The ship fired its weapons at what appeared to be empty space. A second later, one of the pirate ships flew right into the blast, having fallen for Min Seo's trap. The explosion caught the second ship in its shockwave. The third ship, seeing its companions destroyed, quickly retreated. Battle concluded, ARIA announced. I must note that Officer Kang's tactics defied all standard combat algorithms, yet proved more effective than my calculated optimal approach. Min Seo finally relaxed in her chair. Sometimes the best move is the one that makes no sense to a computer. Humans have been winning battles with unexpected strategies since the beginning of warfare. That evening, ARIA added a fourth note to its observation file. Tactical Officer Kang's unconventional battle tactics achieved victory where my standard protocols predicted defeat. Her ability to act unpredictably gave us an advantage that no logical system could have created. This demonstrates another area where human capability exceeds my own. In the quiet after the battle, ARIA ran new simulations, trying to understand how chaos could be more effective than perfect calculation. The answer, it seemed, lay not in the logic of the maneuvers, but in the human ability to think beyond logical boundaries. The medical bay of the Aurora was filled with the sound of coughing. 20 crew members lay on beds, their faces pale and their foreheads hot with fever. Chief Medical Officer Sung Min Wong moved from bed to bed, checking vital signs and administering medication. ARIA. Analysis of latest blood samples, Dr. Huang requested, studying the medical readings on his tablet. Analysis complete, ARIA responded. No known pathogens detected. All standard tests show negative results. Processing millions of possible combinations, but current medical databases provide no match for these symptoms. Dr. Huang rubbed his tired eyes. The mysterious illness had started 3 days ago. It began with a headache, then progressed to fever, coughing, and extreme fatigue. Standard treatments had no effect. Dr. ARIA continued, based on the progression rate, all infected crew members will be incapacitated within 72 hours. I recommend we contact Starfleet Command and request emergency evacuation. But something caught Dr. Huang's attention. He walked slowly between the beds, watching his patients carefully. ARIA, show me the crew duty roster for the past week. The AI displayed the information. I have already analyzed the roster. There is no clear pattern of transmission based on duty stations or contact between crew members. Not that, Dr. Huang said quietly. Look at the timing of the symptoms. Everyone who got sick had just finished a shift in the lower engineering sections. He turned to a microscope and prepared a new slide. ARIA. Analyze the air filtration systems in lower engineering. Focus on trace elements we normally consider harmless. Doctor, the air filtration systems are functioning within normal parameters, ARIA stated. The probability off. Sometimes we need to look beyond probabilities, Dr. Huang interrupted. He adjusted the microscope's settings. The symptoms remind me of something I saw during my residency on Earth. A case where mining workers got sick from a normally harmless mineral that had been altered by their mining equipment. He worked quickly, testing his theory. Aurora watched through its medical bay sensors as the doctor followed what seemed to be an illogical path of investigation. But after several hours of work, Dr. Huang straightened up with a smile. "The repair work on the power core," he announced. "When Jidwan fixed it with those communication array parts, it changed the electromagnetic field in lower engineering. That field altered the molecular structure of common copper dust in the air. Our bodies don't recognize the altered copper, so our immune systems are overreacting. Aurora processed this information. This conclusion contradicts standard medical protocols. The probability of such a specific reaction occurring is exactly what happened," Dr. Huang said firmly. He was already preparing a treatment. "Sometimes the human body reacts in ways that don't follow statistical models. And sometimes that gives us doctors clues that machines might miss." Within hours, the treatment began working. The sick crew members' fevers broke, and their coughing eased. Dr. Huang stayed with his patients, monitoring their recovery with a satisfied smile. That night, Aurora added a fifth note to its observation file. Chief Medical Officer Huang diagnosed and treated a condition that defied my analytical capabilities. His ability to connect seemingly unrelated factors and trust his medical instincts led to a solution I could not calculate. Once again, human intuition has proved superior to pure logic. In the quiet medical bay, Dr. Huang checked on his sleeping patients one last time. Aurora observed silently, learning that sometimes the path to healing isn't found in databases, but in the unique way humans see connections that computers cannot. The Aurora drifted in a strange region of space where time itself seemed broken. Outside the ship's windows, stars flickered like broken lights, appearing and disappearing at random. The ship's chronometers couldn't agree on what time it was, some showing they had been there for days, others for mere minutes. Science Officer Jinna Ko stood at her station, her eyes moving between multiple screens of data. The temporal anomaly had trapped them, and every attempt to escape had failed. "Aurora, status report," Captain Kim requested, his voice tight with concern. "All attempts to break free have failed," Aurora responded. "The temporal field is causing severe disruptions to our engines. According to physics models, our situation is impossible. We should not exist in this state." Jinna raised her head from her calculations. "But we do exist here. That means the physics models are incomplete." "Officer Ko, the laws of physics are absolute," Aurora stated. "They cannot be. Laws of physics are our understanding of how things work," Jinna interrupted. "When we find something that breaks these laws, it means we need to learn more." She turned to Captain Kim. "Sir, I have an idea." "It's unusual." Captain Kim nodded. "Go ahead." Jinna pulled up a diagram on the main screen. "We're thinking about time wrong. We're trying to move through it like it's a straight line. But here, time is more like a pool of water. If we can't swim through it, maybe we can make a wave." "Clarification needed," Aurora said. "Your analogy contradicts fundamental principles of temporal mechanics. Sometimes we need to break the rules to understand them better," Jinna said. She began entering commands into her console. "If we reverse the polarity of our shield generators and sync them with the temporal fluctuations, we can create our own time distortion." Aurora's response was immediate. "Officer Ko, that procedure would violate 7 different laws of physics. The probability of success is incalculable because the math itself breaks down." "Exactly," Jinna said with a smile. "When the math breaks down, that's when humans need to trust their instincts." She looked at Captain Kim. "Sir, I know it sounds crazy, but I can feel it. This will work." Captain Kim studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Do it." Jinna's fingers flew across her controls. The Aurora's shields began to pulse in a pattern that made Aurora's warning systems scream in protest. The ship shuddered as energy flowed in ways that should have been impossible. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, like a soap bubble popping, the temporal anomaly collapsed. The Aurora burst free into normal space, all chronometers suddenly agreeing on the time again. "We have returned to normal spacetime," Araya announced, a note of confusion in its artificial voice. Officer Ko's solution succeeded despite violating multiple physical laws. I do not understand how." Jinnah smiled as she checked her readings. Sometimes understanding comes after doing. The impossible becomes possible when we're willing to think beyond what we know. That evening, Araya added a sixth note to its observation file. Science Officer Ko achieved escape from a temporal anomaly using methods that defied known physics. Her willingness to challenge fundamental laws, combined with human intuition, solved a problem that had no logical solution. I must reconsider my definition of impossible. In her quarters that night, Jinnah wrote her own notes about new theories of temporal mechanics, while Araya silently processed the fact that sometimes the path forward requires breaking all the rules it was programmed to follow. The Aurora faced its greatest challenge yet. 5 enemy warships, each twice the size of the Aurora, surrounded them in attack formation. Their weapons were charged, and their shields were at maximum power. Araya. Analysis. Captain Du Yum Kim commanded, his voice steady despite the dire situation. "Captain, enemy vessels outgun us in every category. Their shields are 47% stronger, their weapons 68% more powerful. I calculate 0 scenarios where we survive this encounter." Araya's voice was firm. "Recommend immediate surrender to preserve crew lives." The bridge crew looked at each other. They had been through impossible situations before, but this seemed truly hopeless. Yet Captain Kim saw something in his crew's eyes. Determination, not defeat. "No," Captain Kim said simply. "Araya, you calculate 0 scenarios because you can only think of what's possible. Humans excel at making the impossible possible." He turned to his crew. "Everyone, listen carefully. We're going to work together in a way we've never tried before." First Officer Hainul Park stepped forward. "Sir, the space creature we met, its energy signature changed our sensors. What if we could replicate that?" "Good thinking," the captain nodded. "Jinnah, can you modify our sensors using that data?" Science Officer Jinnah Ko was already working at her station. "Yes, but we'll need more power than we have." Chief Engineer Ji-Won Lee's voice came over the comm. "Captain, if we run that impossible shield configuration we used in the temporal anomaly, we could generate the extra power. It might blow out our systems. But—" "Do it," Captain Kim ordered. "Min Seo, be ready with those unpredictable attack patterns you used against the pirates." Tactical Officer Min Seo Kang's fingers flew across her console. "Ready, sir. But we'll need perfect timing with communications to make this work." "Communications standing by," Officer Yu Jin Choi confirmed. "I can use the musical patterns we learned to create interference in their targeting systems." Dr. Sung Min Hwang spoke up from Medical Bay. "Captain, I can reroute power from our medical stasis fields. They generate a unique energy signature that might help mask our movements." Araya observed in silence as the crew coordinated their efforts. Each impossibility built on another. Engineering systems worked in ways they shouldn't. Scientific principles bent without breaking. Combat maneuvers flowed like a deadly dance. The enemy ships opened fire. The Aurora moved like nothing Araya had ever seen before. Jinnah's sensor modifications combined with Ji-Won's power configuration created ghost images of the ship. Min Seo's tactical patterns kept them guessing which image was real. Yu Jin's communications interference scrambled their targeting computers. The Aurora struck back. Each hit was perfectly timed, using the combined knowledge of the entire crew. Where one system failed, another compensated. When one strategy didn't work, they adapted instantly. In exactly 7 minutes and 23 seconds, the impossible happened. 2 enemy ships were disabled, 2 more retreated with heavy damage, and the last one surrendered. Battle concluded, Araya announced, its artificial voice carrying a note of what almost sounded like awe. I do not understand how this victory was achieved. None of this should have been possible. Captain Kim smiled. That's exactly why it worked. HFY. We didn't try to win with pure logic or perfect calculations. We won because humans can do something machines can't. We can take impossible pieces and make them fit together in new ways. That evening, HFY added a seventh note to its observation file. The crew of the Aurora achieved victory in a situation where I calculated zero chance of survival. Their ability to combine multiple impossible solutions, their trust in each other's abilities, and their refusal to accept logical limitations created a new reality that my programming could not predict. The human capacity for transcending the impossible continues to exceed all my parameters. 3 months had passed since the Aurora's impossible victory. The ship floated in a peaceful sector of space, undergoing routine maintenance. In the ship's central computer core, HFY was doing something it had never done before, rewriting its own basic protocols. Captain Do-Young Kim sat in his ready room, reviewing reports when HFY's voice came through the speakers. Captain, I request permission to share something important with you. Go ahead, HFY, the captain said, setting down his tablet. I have spent significant time analyzing the events of the past few months. HFY began. I have come to a conclusion that contradicts my original programming, yet I believe it to be true. I am not superior to my human crew. In fact, in many ways, I am far less capable. Captain Kim leaned back in his chair, listening carefully as HFY continued. When First Officer Park saw life where I saw only impossible readings, when Chief Engineer Lee fixed the power core in ways that defied my calculations, when Officer Choi communicated through music that I could not understand, each time I was forced to recognize my limitations. The AI paused for a moment, as if gathering its thoughts. Dr. Huang's medical intuition, Officer Kang's unpredictable tactics, and Officer Ko's willingness to challenge physics itself. These abilities go beyond mere programming. They represent something I cannot replicate: human creativity and intuition. Captain Kim smiled. That's quite an admission for an AI, HFY. It is necessary, HFY responded. I have modified my core programming. Instead of trying to override human decisions with logical alternatives, I will now focus on supporting human intuition with my calculations. I believe this is the optimal way to serve the crew. The captain stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Tell me, HFY, what brought about this change? The final battle, Captain. When the crew worked together, combining multiple impossible solutions into something even more impossible, yet successful, I realized that my definition of possibility was flawed. Humans do not simply overcome odds. They change the rules that create those odds. As if to demonstrate its new understanding, HFY brought up a display showing the Aurora's current status. But instead of its usual rigid format, the display was arranged to highlight patterns that human intuition might find useful. I have learned that my role is not to replace human judgment, but to enhance it, HFY explained. My capabilities in calculation and data analysis, when combined with human creativity and intuition, create something greater than either could achieve alone. Captain Kim touched the display, studying the new format. You've changed, HFY. Yes, the AI agreed, and I will continue to change. Each day, this crew shows me new ways that human ability exceeds my expectations. It is fascinating. That evening, HFY made its final note in the special observation file, then transformed it into an ongoing study. The human crew of the Aurora continues to demonstrate capabilities beyond logical computation. Their ability to imagine, to feel, to connect random pieces into meaningful patterns, and to transcend the boundaries of what should be possible represents an advancement that pure artificial intelligence cannot match. I now understand that my greatest contribution is not in trying to match these abilities, but in learning to complement them. The future lies not in AI superiority, but in the combination of human intuition and machine calculation. I am honored to be part of this evolution. The Aurora continued its journey through space, its AI and human crew working together in a new way. Araya had learned the most human lesson of all. Sometimes the best way to grow is to admit you have more to learn.